the journey of the consumer tech landscape in India. So why don't you tell us about what stood out for you? Were there any inflection points in this journey? How has consumer tech evolved in India?
So I consider consumer tech in three phases as far as the country is concerned. Phase one was what I call the efficiency phase, where you have a retail outlet, and then e-commerce comes in. It makes uh, predictable delivery, predictable price, predictable quality, and so on and so forth. So it was really about efficiency. Some money came there overall, and that's when companies like Myntra, even Flipkart at that point of time, started, and many others during that time. I'm not taking the phase before, let's say, 2006. Uh, this efficiency phase actually enabled consumer companies to grow. Uh, However, what was missing at that point was the ability for the country to enable digital transactions. I still remember in Myntra, at one point we were discussing the number of credit cards in the country, and that number seemed to be 5-6 million million credit cards. Incidentally, um, that's how innovation on cash on delivery started. So that first phase grew some companies, and it morphed into uh, profitability being higher and higher, which went through trading to some amount of private labeling, and then scale happening in a limited manner, because the consumer digital transaction beyond a scale could not happen. There was not just many credit cards. Second phase is when the intersection of consumer as a horizontal and vertical started happening. So consumer with fintech, one of our companies called Five, which used to be called Early Salary. Consumer with health tech, so CureFit comes into that space. Consumer with food, CureFood comes into that space. Consumer with agri-tech, so AgroStar comes into that space. And the list goes on. So this intersection was very important because consumer will be in each of these sectors. And I think the second phase saw that interface or the intersection morph into real companies going up. But still, the missing element was the number of digital transactions in the country was very poor. And I think 2016 started to see the change in that. 2016, UPI was set up.
Yeah.
It was slow in the beginning. And the phase three is what Nandan calls population scale opportunity. The reason is that for a consumer company, the TAM has shot up now. Okay, it doesn't matter that there are 40-50 million credit cards in the country, and maybe the number of users of credit card must be 70 million, or number of actual credit cards will be 70-80 million, but number of actual users is only 40-50 million. So today, UPI enables 300 plus million people to transact digitally. Okay, that's one of the highest in the world right now. And suddenly, an investor like us, or a company in the consumer space, can theoretically think of saying, I can now reach to 300 million people by then. And if you take a 5-year view, when hopefully this UPI reach will be up to 700 million people in the country, you're reaching population scale. If the country's population of adults is about 1 billion, touching base 70% in 5 to 7 years is amazing opportunity. So the question then became for investors like us is how to tap that opportunity. And so I see this first phase three as population scale opportunity for consumer companies to scale massively in the country. However, if you look at products, then margin extraction is a very important point of view. And margin extraction, at least from our portfolio companies, we went into backward integration. Backward integration would mean extracting margin out of supply chain, warehousing, and manufacturing. What was being imported? So my belief is you can't build a long-lasting company by trading, right? Well, actually you can, but that's how many Japanese companies bring. But if you want to do something realistic and you want to go to the masses, then you have to have design and manufacturing into your own office. So to that extent, under our portfolio belt right now, we have 7 large manufacturing outlets, whether it's rent cars, first cry, I consider food as manufacturing, and we've discussed this many times how to extract the margin out of the supply chain overall, and 80 subcontracting manufacturing units. And that has happened only in the last 8 to 9 years. So this phase will see product design gaining prominence, product market fit changing, because the first 25, 30 million people who consume most of the consumer uh, products in the country, they have a certain price point, and the next 100 million will have a lower price point. So how to address that lower price point? You have to have a different product design. You have to have a different product. You can't have a different product quality, right? The last thing is, in the whole space of good quality products and brands coming out of India, I think this phase is also taking your brand outside the country. So today, just to give you anecdotal evidence, out of our portfolio company revenue is about $3 billion right now, and about 700 million comes from international operations. Wow. And that's because a very good quality eyewear from Lenskart is sold in some 10 plus countries right now. And what you sell here for $1, you can sell outside the country for anywhere between $25 to $60, which means even if you take into logistics costs increasing, your margin increases become very high. So consumer companies, I believe, in the hard product area will chase margins from backward integration and international operations, while attempting to go to population scale in the country.
That's really amazing, and especially on the global expansion, that really resonated with me. I know when I started out, it was largely SaaS and travel, but it's so great to see First Cry, Daily Hunt. You've been, and I think I'll have you answer this. So feel free to disagree with Sudhir if you want to challenge his thinking. It'll be great to see some action on the panel. But Naveen, my question to you is that Sudhir spoke about population scale solutions, and who better to talk about it than you? You've been profitable businesses at scale, and you also obviously spoke about globalization. You're present in many countries. So for the benefit of our audience, if you can tell us a little bit about how you're approaching globalization, population scale solutions when it comes to InMobi. And also, are you as optimistic as Sudhir when it comes to the addressable market and transacting users and so on and so forth? Do you think they will completely explode in the coming years, or do you see a gradual rise?
Yeah, firstly, congratulations on the report, guys.
Thank you.
I read through it on my way here. It's very insightful. I'm going to actually answer a bunch of things because I read through the report. And since everybody else didn't read it, so I think I look smart. So congratulations on the report.
Thank you.
Look, I think there are a few points there that you're asking. I think one is the consumer market large in India today? It's not. It's not a large market, and it's very hard to build a consumer business in India, period. And so what happens is, but you take a long-term view on it, everybody's going to be happy because your GDP is going to double over the next few years, 5-7 years. So you will basically make these Excel sheets, but the investors are actually not sitting there for a long-term perspective because they need their returns in 7 to 8 years, and they don't have that much time. And so therefore, I think the points that Sudhir was mentioning are not the strategies with which you start. They are necessities that you actually have to go with. So whether it's globalization, whether it's backward integration, these are not, like if somebody comes to Sudhir, and you should correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody says, hey, I am building a global business. You will not invest in the company. Because how can you build a global business? Because that's a hard thing to do. Or if somebody comes to you and say, hey, I'm actually going to set up a manufacturing unit. You will never invest in that person because you'll say, are you crazy? Who invests in manufacturing? I'm a tech investor. But you're okay with it today because that is the only way you can actually build a margin in the consumer businesses in India. Now, the beauty of our market today is that our country is actually based on transaction businesses. Why? Because of the UPI numbers being 300 million going to 700 million. So everybody is transacting. The cost of transaction is close to zero. It has two effects. One, fintech is very hard to make money out of. It's okay. It's not a bad position to be in. You have to really build very advanced applications to make money in fintech. But the good part is you can do a lot of transactions. The bad part is the pricing is low. Therefore, the margin is very thin. Therefore, you have to basically go do backward integration. But the thing in this whole equation is for startups, you come in and then you have to pray to God to say your VCs are actually going to back you to do backward integration, because it's not going to happen. Otherwise, it's rare that you can actually build a business with backward integration, and you got to be hopeful to say your product is good enough, or you're somehow figured out a global expansion strategy where you basically said, hey, look, I built this in India and I'm going to go outside of India. So, for example, for us, we built our consumer business knowingly very well. So when we started InMobi, I pitched InMobi as like an India advertising platform. About 9 months into it, I realized we'll be dead if I only stay in India. So I did not build InMobi thinking I want to build a global ad platform. I had no clue how to build a global company. But it was necessary to essentially build a global company because that was the only way to survive. All the other advertising platforms that actually were only India focused are dead a decade ago. So that's the reason why you globalize. So it's necessity. The second is, as we build a consumer business, we said, oh, great, we're going to build this in India. Why? It's cheap to actually test in the market. So our underlying strategy was to say, we will try out the product in India because the customer acquisition cost is the lowest in the world relative to the global consumer. But be very clear that the best you can achieve in the market is break even and basically expand globally. So today, we spent 3 to 4 years building the business in India. It does really well. It breaks even. And we now took it outside of India and we've launched in the US, Germany, and Japan, where the per user monetization is 75x, 75 times higher than the same product, same consumer base. You kind of mastered it. So therefore, I think what we are looking at, if you want to build a consumer business in India, one, if you are in the transacting business, figure out how to, you're not going to make money just by selling a great product. Trading was a great, you're not going to make money by trading. So nothing's going to come out of it. Nobody's going to value you. So figure out how you will go deep.
Sure.
Second is globalization has to be part of your strategy if you really want to build a large company. Otherwise, small companies can be.
Sure. Some really interesting insights already from Sudhir and Naveen. We will be taking audience questions, so please, keep your questions ready. I'll ask a couple of more questions, and then we'll start taking questions from all of you. Ankit, we've spoken about some of the themes that are coming out of the report, but I also want to dwell into the consumer journeys, and you across Flipkart, CureFit or CultFit, Cure Foods, you've really been in the space for a while. Tell me what stands out for you from a consumer behavior lens. Is there something that's really stood the test of time? Were there some surprises there?
I think, Roma, if you have to look at the journey which an internet consumer has taken in the last decade, I think Naveen and Sudhir have touched upon a couple of points. One, I think completely agree with Naveen on the fact that building a consumer business in India is super tough. The consumer, no matter how the GDP is growing or no matter how the disposable income is growing, continues to be very, very value conscious. The good thing is that there's a segment of top 10 million Indians which is emerging, and they end up behaving very much like their Western counterparts. The overall basket size or the lifetime value of those customers are comparable to the Western countries, but that's about it. And everything else that you have to build for the next 100 million consumers in India is very, very those customers are very value conscious, and to have high CAC, low LTV will not take your business anywhere. And which is why, if you look at the last 10 years, if you have to just look at pure consumer brands which have become profitable, you're just a handful of them. I think Lenskart, First Cry. And the reason why they've become profitable is because of the two reasons what Naveen and Sudhir touched upon. One, backward integration, precisely what a company like ours, which is Cure Food, we're nothing but like a house of brands. Like we're like an FMCG company. Our back of the house stack is a factory, a supply chain, a cold chain, and a distribution arm. And if we were purely trading, we would be 20% margin lower. And then India also has a very unique taxation structure, In food, it's different, and GST slabs are different, and that does not make doing business in India any cheaper. There is ease of doing business with a single slab, but then intercity, interstate, all of that is not easy. So, in a nutshell, it is a low-paying economy. The customers are not paying more than $5, and the same thing can be sold in a UAE or a US market at $20. But the cogs are not very much cheaper. Given the fact that India is a fast-growing country, there is growth, there is a lot of money in the market. Inflation is very very high, and if you look at you can charge 5x more in the US, but the ingredients probably are only 2x more expensive. So the net margin pool available is very very high. But what has evolved for customers over time is, of course, the propensity to stay loyal to a brand, the propensity to spend online, a willingness to have a or trying to get to a better lifestyle. So, which means overall share of wallet on non-discretionary spends is going up. On discretionary spends is going up. But whether it's going to one brand where you can spend $1,000 on a smartphone versus $300 on a smartphone, it still is a very $300 smartphone economy. I don't see that changing either. But for companies like us, it's a very big opportunity, because then you don't see thousands of brands doing well. Unlike a Western economy or a developed economy, where every few days or every few weeks there'll be a new brand, it'll be the rage, and then it disappears. But in that period, they would have earned their money. In India, those flash in a pan situations, you can't really make money. You have to go very very deep and really commit for a very long time, because I think businesses in India become profitable at 1,000 crore scale. In fact, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who runs a large VC fund. He's like, this is a very frustrating thing that in India consumer businesses turn profitable at 100 million scale, which is like almost like committing 7-8 years and at least 50 million of capital, which means the first the table stake is 50 million to build a consumer brand in India. So that's what we are living right now.
When you spoke about discretionary spend,
Yes.
I think there's a page in the report. You must see this. I was pretty surprised by how consumers are now defining what is discretionary and what's not,
Yes.
and especially on entertainment and gaming. So that's my shameless plug-in for you to check the report. Naveen, let me come to you next. And Sudhir mentioned this before when we were chatting there, that you have managed to build one of the largest independent advertising business. So my question to you is, what is the strength of the advertising business today, and do you think it's like enough
India?
in India, and is it enough to sustain, support the consumer tech businesses?
So, just purely from a market point of view, India is 1% of the global ad market. So, which means if the global ad market is, call it $800 billion or something, maybe $1 trillion, India is about $10 billion. To begin with, that just shows it's small relative to population, relative to GDP. Now, the reason why India's ad market relative to its GDP is small is because of the point Ankit was mentioning, that the discretionary spends are lower. You still have per consumer spending is mostly going in essentials. It's not going towards, hey, I can, let me buy 3 extra pair of shirts or, whatever. And so therefore the ad market today does not support, it's very hard for ad market to support a consumer business. Typically globally, consumer businesses, if you look at the US, right? All consumer businesses, full stop, all consumer businesses are supported by one pillar, which is advertising. Retail is supported not because you buy retail, is because of retail media. And it's absolutely opposite to the Indian approach because of the ad market being, that large. I think we are really far from that worldview. And therefore, I don't think the ad markets are the way to go in India. And we have seen this, by the way, a lot of, you would not find a very large local media platform. You guys are dominating the market because you've, whatever. But,
We don't necessarily use the word dominating, but I know what you're saying.
well, if Satya can go into the Congress and say, look, the search dollars are basically driving everybody nuts, I can also say it. But that's true. It is hard to build a consumer business on advertising in India. Absolutely impossible to do it. For us, we couldn't build the ad business only in India. Therefore, we went outside. We are one of the top 7 ad platforms in the world.
That's amazing.
70% of that comes from the US. Only 5% comes from India. That too because we're emotional about the country and I spend more time here. And if I were not from India, I would not be here. Like it makes no sense to be in India.
Sudhir, my next question is to you. Before we open it up for audience, maybe one question each to both of you. Sudhir, I'll start with you. You did touch upon some of the success pillars that the report talks about, backward integration, DPI, etc. Do you want to talk a little more about, say, omni-channel and what you're seeing being succeeding in the companies that you are funding? Product innovation and all of that. And
Sure.
it'd be great if you can give us some examples of the way you did earlier.
Sure. So I think, again, if I see a stream of, let's say, factors which have made some of our companies at least successful in the consumer space, I think there emerges 3 or 4 of them. One is differentiation. And differentiation cannot be at the beginning only. Differentiation has to be a continuous process overall. When we went into fintech consumer, I think one of the things we learned is that traditional platforms are built on NBFCs and so on and so forth. I remember, I think T7 and I were discussing at that point of time that, there is very little venture capital and private equity in the country who's going to fund these businesses.
Yeah.
And international private equity capital was funding international models. They were not funding domestic models overall. So to that extent, follow-on capital was very difficult. So we said, okay, let's do one thing. There's a lot of capital in India. That belief started, I would say, in 2013 when we started raising rupee capital. If there's a lot of capital in India which is funding the public markets, which is funding NBFCs, we sort of accidentally, I would say, hit upon a couple of companies who were doing faceless lending. That means off-balance sheet money. Off-balance sheet money, because there was a large, you could achieve certain scale. Today in consumer, we have 5 which is doing huge amount of lending off-balance sheet. And we have, I think they're almost 1,000 crores a month right now. And we have Vina, though in the business of trade lending, 1.2, 1.3 billion a month, right? Off balance sheet lending. Now that was differentiated. It is very difficult for anybody to come in and achieve that scale and dominance if you have a significantly technology-based differentiation. Is the point I'm making. If you look at the product companies, to achieve, I think 10 million is what you mentioned, but many of our companies are at 15 to 20 million now. Look at it. A company like Lenskart or FirstCry is addressing only 15 to 25 million people in the country and building a massive business. Okay. Now, if that is the case, if you want to achieve the next 25 to 30 million, right? The lowest price of a Lenskart eyeglass is possibly $10. They will not buy at $10. So how do you produce a glass by maintaining margins, not reducing margins at $7.50? And that can only be done by investing in material science. Okay. So innovation through product design is very important. That holds good for, to my mind, food. It goes good, and you innovate right at the back end. So I think innovation and differentiation is absolutely critical in every business, and that we have seen overall. I think these 2 factors have played a major role. The other factor is omni-channel. Now, omni-channel, in our view, right from 2010 onwards, we sort of said that India is a physical market. And by the way, omni-channel was not in fashion at that time. So effectively, if you see both Lenskart, FirstCry, and now Cure Foods, Cure Fit, there is anywhere between 100 to 1,000 stores each company has. And they are increasing year by year. However, it is very important to understand that there is an online market addressability, there is a store addressability, but this addresses only those 20-25 million people. It doesn't address the rest. So if you have to address the rest, you have to do something different. If you talk to Unilever, they first address general trade in the country
Yeah.
and then reach the masses, right? That time Unilever job used to be the most at IM graduates used to go and pick up a bag and go to
Day
Kirana
zero.
stores. Now they don't, I think, right? So effectively, the general trade is a very large market. But if 100 rupee baby soap, nobody will buy on general trade. So you have to make a soap which is absolutely brilliant quality at 10 rupees. So there is product design again. So companies are now building general trade technology platforms to reach these merchants and offering them solutions on products which local hyperlocal markets or local hyperlocal supply chain cannot give with the right quality overall. And I think that's where brand plays and so on and so forth. So to my mind, I think the bigger scale, which is the revolution, which I think will happen, again, not tomorrow morning, it's a long play, will be what Unilever has already done, where internet-based startups are starting to address markets which are addressable by general trade. Because general trade markets, no internet-based company addresses right now, or very few do in a different manner altogether. So I think these are some of the innovations which are very important. Omnichannel is absolutely critical to the country. It will remain so for the next 25 years, right?
Totally agree.
Absolutely clear.
Totally agree. Let's shift gears a bit because no conversation today can be over without talking about AI, Gen AI. That's the buzzword. It's been the buzzword for 12 months now. So Ankit, whether it's in your own business or the businesses that you invest in, how are you seeing it? Sudhir spoke about differentiation based on technology, getting better efficiencies, etc. What is the current state of affairs? Do you see companies leveraging technology enough? How are you thinking about your own business?
Right. So if you look at 80% of venture funded companies in the country right now, I'm not talking about deep tech or I'm not talking about companies which are completely backed on R&D. Most of them right now can actually make do with half the tech they've built. There's a lot of over investment in hiring engineers,
Really?
building tech in the company by themselves, and not using the ecosystem solutions available. Back in 2009-10, when we were building Flipkart, we had to build our own payment gateway as well, and we had to build our own logistics solutions, warehousing software, and whatnot. Now, for any company which is still in the pre-PMF stage or even less than $50 million revenue, I would say that there's so much tech available outside the company, and that too in a very cost efficient manner, because if you're using a SaaS platform, if you're using any available solutions, you're not committing to fixed costs, you're not committing to making mistakes, where you, and these are expensive mistakes, you build out a solution and it does not work through and you have to re-architect it. These are very expensive solutions. So my strong belief is that 80% companies in the country are over invested on tech, and the idea should be on simplifying their business flows, because most of these companies are trading companies, most of these companies are just commerce companies, they're not tech companies as they call it. And for them, I think most of the solutions are already available. Of course, when the company becomes much bigger and you have to start building custom solutions, that's where the role of technology as a business enabler comes in. But I think before that, for the first 2 to 4 years of journey, you can easily figure out solutions available in the market. Having said that, there are core areas for every business where tech and data are absolutely important, and that becomes your core IP. You have to be able to figure out what your core IP is versus not. For us, the whole science around recipes, portion sizes, macronutrient, micronutrient, we do use tech tools to ensure that what we're doing is right. We've built some internal kitchen flows to make sure that the right portion sizing is there is right ingredient portioning there. But to be able to build out the entire commerce flow again, despite so much being available in the market, would be foolish. And which is why a company like ours, which is like a close to 100 million revenue company now and shipping out 60-70,000 orders a day, we can make do with 15 engineers because we have a lot of SaaS tools available out there. So this is generally also my advice to a lot of startups where I invest in, that if you are a pure commerce company, please first start off by looking at what tools are available outside. And of course, if you're a company like InMobi where you have to build that the tech or the platform is the core product, then it's a very different thinking. But like I said, 80% companies which we are invested in are companies which are just commerce companies.
That's really very good advice. So we'll open it up for questions. Can anybody tell me how are we doing on time? How many questions can we take? Okay. Two questions. All right. So let's go with you. Uh, do we have a hand mic?
I think I'm loud enough.
Okay, go for it.
Hi, I'm Shweta. I'm building Wildermark, and which is, in my vision, a Myntra of healthy foods. Now, by the pandemic, I understood that my market is just 10 million people, and I need 50 million to build it. Now, I am at a 0 to 1 stage. I've been struggling with it for the last 2.5 years, and I have now pivoted to an AI kind of a version where I built it out with Shopify right now. So my question is, how do you get to that stage where an investor like them would want to put in or start putting in that 50 million, which can build it out? Because clearly capital makes a lot of difference in building this out right now. So how do I get to that stage?
Thank you, Shweta, for that
I was
very
hoping,
interesting question.
I was hoping because
It's
both
a
Naveen,
public ask for like money. Just yes or no.
I was hoping Naveen and Ankit have raised capital so they would know the answer. Okay, so listen, I think there's no magic wand. It's something which investors like us do seed investing overall, and in seed investing, the basic proposition, your vision as to what you want to do, how differentiated it is, and how you're planning to build it. A little bit of what's your product market fit in the early days. I think those are good factors to get the early stage of funding. I also realize that the last 3 years have been very tough overall. But I must say that angel funding is actually pretty strong in the country right now. So effectively, what you have on the ground, focus on it, fine tune it. Product market fit is absolutely crucial. And now, most important is some amount of revenue coming in. I think those days are gone when you could realize investing or capital on mouse and eyeballs. Okay, some amount of product market fit where revenue is there is absolutely crucial. Um, so I think that is fundamentally okay. I want to mention one thing: as you grow, it's a long haul which you are doing right now. Okay, there is capital available in the country, and in fact, more and more rupee capital. Okay, absolutely crucial. There are family offices who are investing. There are Indian funds. About 300 Indian funds are operating in the country. Typically, entrepreneurs don't look at them overall, and major, let's say, deal flow goes to the top 5 or 6 or 7. I think do start looking at specialized Indian funds who are either verticalized or on deep tech or otherwise. Um, Last but not the least, um, it's very crucial to deliver results on a long haul. It's not a sprint, okay? And it's not necessary to burn lots of money to get there. It's important, and you don't have to grow at 100% per annum. You can grow at 50, 40, 30% per annum while you're doing PMF. Because I think scarcity of capital is a boon because you need less capital to prove points. It's very easy to burn money overall. In fact, the last 5, 6 years, there was what I call transient capital investors who've gone now, right? So that capital is not available. That's why there is a so-called dip right now. So stick to your game, and you will get capital. Differentiate yourself. Differentiate very hard, and PMF as well as don't burn too much of money.
And there are two super angels on the stage with 100 plus investments between them.
So we can take one more question. Yeah.
Hi, Ankit. Actually, you mentioned a point in between where you said that in US, you don't need that scale to get profitable, and even if you cease to exist, you make some money and go. Whereas in India, it's different. Where you were talking to your VC friend and you was mentioning that you have to get to that scale to get profitable, right? So, what are those practices which enable that in the US, and how can we learn from that? It might be a noob question, but yeah,
No, I think it's an important question. So, if you look at a consumer business in US, just consider a burger joint, a single store burger joint in US versus in India. I think the margin profile is very different. Like I said, in India, getting to a 60-70% gross margin is very, very difficult. It really requires you to do a lot of backward integration, very deep work on material science, etc., whatnot. In US, just the margin pool available is very high. The COGS to cost ratio is almost 4x, 5x. So you end up making 80% margin. The other aspect is the while the absolute cost CAC, which Naveen mentioned, is the lowest in India, the CAC as a percentage of revenue in India is one of the highest. and which is why companies like us, it's almost impossible to invest money in Google and Meta. Like almost like the only way of getting profitable is to not put money there. Because I'll just give you a small 30-second anecdote. I was looking at my own angel portfolio and saw that about 8 to 10 of the D2C companies have shut shop. Companies which were, and then I said, okay, it's good to analyze what happened. I sat with the founder. They all had raised $1 to $3 million. 70% money had gone into Google, Meta, AWS in the first 18 months itself. So that's where I think that's the big difference. The CAC to the ability to so if the CAC is $1, are you able to extract $10 or not? In India, getting anything more than $3 to $5, whether it's a hot food item or a package snack or a T-shirt, is super difficult, and you're competing with the same marketing dollar for Flipkart, Myntra, Swiggy, and you, because those are the 25 million customers. Yes, absolutely.
Can I just share a thought?
Yeah, sure, please.
I've done entrepreneurship for 15 years, and there is very interesting trend that exists in our country. So if you take the American models, they are straitjacketed. You build something, you get a PMF. You can do a PMF on a dog collar. It's $1 billion market. You may succeed, may not succeed. If your product is differentiated, you'll succeed. So it's a very straitjacketed approach, and we all somehow learned that playbook. But when you get to India, I think the thing that really matters is our ability as entrepreneurs to figure out a model to first not die. Yeah. And figuring out that model to not die is the first step to figuring out a model to scale. Now, in that figuring out a model to scale, we have done things that now get translated to strategies. Things like going global. Like nobody really thinks about a business when you have nothing. You say, hey, I'll go global because it sounds absurd. Or like think about the point that Sudhir was mentioning, which is to say backward integration. Like if I were to ask them, as a tech investor, are you a tech investor or are you a manufacturing investor? He'll be a little perplexed at it because he will, of course, make a pitch for tech, but actually now is a manufacturing investor. But that's absolutely okay because India's model will look different. We have 30 million users who basically pay, but our population is 1.6 billion. To search for that 30 million out of 1.6 billion is the CAC issue that we are dealing with. So therefore, there is no way you can actually spend marketing money, and you will figure out 10 other ways which will only be ours. So therefore, what happens in a broader scheme of things, we will, as entrepreneurs, we will write our own set of strategies. And I think India is writing its own set of strategies. They are getting published now as reports because a bunch of people do it, and then it becomes you can see a pattern to that madness. But I think if the first time you're going to do this, you will feel a lot of pressure, and everybody will come and tell you not to do it, especially the investors. And I think it's important not to listen at that moment and to actually go ahead and do it, because that is those models that have now become successful, because none of our models will work that have worked elsewhere because of our unique population level, GDP per capita level, GDP level, which is pretty high, by the way. So I think we're in a very unique position, which, by the way, is a complex one. And therefore, if we are able to solve the problems that we will, I think people will either survive and become large. So for a B2C company, by the way, you have to figure out how to get to $50 million of revenue before you can say, I have PMF. Because, it's not it is a market which is throwing away companies very rapidly. Like companies that have existed at $100+ million of revenue go bankrupt and are basically available for like pennies to $1 because the model is not sustainable. And sustainability of these models is not happening at low numbers. You have to figure it out at higher numbers. So I just wanted to share the thought because I think we are figuring out our own model. And if those that are able to do it are building great companies, if not, you keep trying.
Yeah.
Well,
Can I
thanks for
just
that. Yeah,
can I just
please.
add to that? I think
Of course.
I totally agree with you. What's happened unique in India? Those companies have survived. Those people. So cash on delivery. No international investor used to believe in it. In fact,
Yeah.
we could not raise capital in many of our companies because they were doing cash on delivery.
Yeah.
So who came in? Indian investors, right? Because Indian investors had people like us. Where do we learn from? We learn from family offices who have started industries and built those industries locally. When we talk to them, right, they don't talk to you on CAC, by the way. उनको तो पता ही नहीं है CAC क्या होता है. I mean, now they know, but they talk about profitability. They talk about cash on
Yeah.
delivery.
Flow.
They have heavy cash flow,
FCF.
right? I think there is merit in learning how Indian industries, small and big, have been built, right? So, cash on delivery is a stellar example of what did not work in the US because many investors, international PE investors came and said, it's not worked in the US. How can you do it in India? Right? So whenever somebody takes a Shopify example with me, I fall back and I say, you know what? It's not going to work in India because India is different. Off balance sheet lending has never worked anywhere in the world. Right? People in the beginning used to ask us, why is there no Facebook in India? Because India is an open market. Nobody understood that, right? So I think there are differentiators in India which are unique to identify and adopt in your journey right from day one, which are very, if I may say, desi in nature, which are absolutely brilliant, which international competition cannot adopt.
Amazing. Ankit, any parting thoughts from you?
No, I think just to resonate with Naveen's thought, right? So the reason why the profitability happens at a large scale is because the fixed cost for an American company or an Indian company will still remain the same, but the contribution margin or the margin per order that you're making is so much lesser. So if you were a profitable company in 100 orders in the Western market or even the China market, you'll have to do 10,000 orders to get to that same level of 5-member central team, so that's the reason why it happens. So either build very very lean central teams. That's one other piece of advice with any early stage entrepreneurs here, that the biggest expense that you carry on your balance sheet for the like on an annuity basis is the central team that you build, and being able to be very lean there allows you to make more mistakes during the PMF stage versus the other case. Yeah.
I'm very tempted to ask a one word or two word question to all of you. The question is going to be the same. If you were to pick one theme or one sector across the consumer tech to invest in, which one would that be?
Maybe I can go. I don't know if it's consumer tech, but consumer, I think brands in every segment. I think India will have new brands in every category.
Okay.
And we are seeing it happen. There'll be thousands of people who will build it, and 10 new brands will emerge for the next decade in every category: fashion,
Very
food,
interesting.
alcohol, beverage, everywhere.
Naveen?
Well, I should go build it. Why should I
Okay.
talk about it here?
Okay.
But
That's
nonetheless,
fair.
I think I think there are new set of companies. Ankit actually mentioned a point a little while back. There are new set of companies that are coming up, which are basically going to be built on the top of the LLM models. Uh, less than 10 engineers.
Yeah.
The model will actually scale very rapidly, or can scale pretty rapidly because of the uniqueness of the solution. Because here's the case, right? In the next 1 year, every existing business model can actually be disrupted through LLM at a cost base which is 1/100th of the existing cost base. Therefore, your ability to essentially change the economics of the business is quite existing. So therefore, people will pick these levers, go disrupt them, and those businesses actually don't need that much of funding. So you can actually look. It's just going to totally change. Like we ourselves are looking at, we have very deep strategic partners with one of the 3 LLM companies. Will not name which one, but I've seen the 2 versions ahead, and it's mind blowing what it is doing to like products that we're trying to build. Like 3 people engineering team is like launching products, and because we still have this historical memory of how teams have to be set up, you're struggling to say कुछ तो गलत कर रहे हैं. ये मतलब 5 लोग और लगा देते हैं, चाहिए ही नहीं. But it's literally like it's changing the functioning model.
Very, very interesting. Sudhir?
Yeah, so I would say I don't have a fixed
Sure.
method or I think let's let's look at what's happening in India right now. It is forecast. I'll give you some five anecdotal points. Delhi NCR is forecasted by 2047 to be 50 million people. Okay. The air transportation numbers in the US, consumer transportation, is for 300 million people, 1 billion trips. That means every person is doing 3 times the trips. In India, it is 1:1 or maybe less than 1:1. If you look at, and similar numbers for train transportation and other things. If you look at the addressable market right now, 10 to 25 million is what is being worked upon right now. And there is a general trade in the market space which is going to increase. Longer run, product differentiation has to be very different. Big change which is happening. The fourth one is that the 10 million people are consuming much more and the growth patterns on the rest is going down. I think these are trends which are being seen. So what India needs in consumer is very important to identify and see where you want to do the needful. So, and by the way, technology will play an important part in addressing those needs, but it has to be very, very Indianized. So to my mind, I am not pitching a sector. I think consumer is the sector. Intersections with health, agri, etc., are very crucial because plain consumer is going to be D2C brands
Yeah.
in the market, but how they grow, every current company is going to be completely challenged. Last but not the least, whenever these brands have grown, we are starting to notice international brands cannot enter India now. In the eyewear space, Lenskart cannot enter, global eyewear companies cannot enter India. Okay. In the baby care space, global baby care companies, because of first cry, cannot enter India because the cost of entry becomes very high. So it's possible over a 10 to 12 to 13 year. And VCs like us have to understand we have to stick around with the company, if possible, for 10, 12, 13 years, which you rightly said was the model of 7 to 8 years. We found it out. We've been investors in the top companies for 12 years now, overall. So I think instead of saying this is the one thing to do, I would look at the market, the trending changes, and try to do a fit there and see how that grows. India is a large market with challenges like CAC and so on and so forth. But I think many of them, in a small way, are being addressed. But do it in the Indian way and not what works in the US.
Thank you so much for this super insightful and I must say very, very candid conversation. Thank you so much, Ankit, Naveen, and Sudhir. Thank you.